Welcome everyone to the Dawson.net user group. Tonight, Leslie Richardson going to be talking about the future of Visual Studio. Leslie, thank you so much for coming out tonight and talking about this. And I'm very excited about this. I know we were talking about what topics to discover with this, and I'm glad we settled on this. And I know we're going to have a lot of very interesting discussions on this because I don't know if it's public yet. Is there a upcoming changes that's public? I don't know if
There,
it's public.
yeah, so there's a lot of changes that I'm going to talk about that are public. And as for like the GA of the thing I'm talking about today, stay tuned because it's sooner than you think. I don't think
Awesome.
I'm actually allowed to say the official date yet, but stay tuned.
It is coming, so I'm excited about it. But so the future changes of Visual Studio will be out and in our hands relatively soon. So this is good timing for this, and I really appreciate you talking about this, Leslie. All right, from here, I will hand it over to you.
Oh, well, thank you, Sean. And hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Just a little bit about me. I was mentioning earlier, I actually did used to live in Oklahoma, in Edmond specifically. So Oklahoma is a place to me. But these days I live in Washington and Seattle, where it's like really cold all of a sudden today, which is why I'm wearing a giant jacket. So it's the fashion as I'm sitting in the focus room in Microsoft campus right now. But I'm Leslie Richardson. I'm a product manager on the .NET tooling team at Microsoft. Right now, I'm working a lot on like MCP server stuff, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in this talk. But for the most part, we're going to be talking about Visual Studio, which is the team that I used to work on. And I still host the Visual Studio Toolbox show on YouTube and Twitch. Just shameless plug if you want to watch me chatting with cool people about cool tools that they should be using in Visual Studio. That's a great place to go and get some deep dives and behind the scenes intel on what went down while developing those features. And yeah, we're talking about the future of Visual Studio, which in reality is really a big ol' what's new in Visual Studio 2026, which we announced, I guess, a little over a month ago at this point. And the insiders build of that is out for you to play with if you haven't already. And as for GA, as I mentioned before, stay tuned. But for this talk, I'm going to be sharing some of the big things that we're introducing along with Visual Studio 2026, including, of course, features, but also just how we're going to go about communicating those features and releasing things in the future. So there's this popular survey that happens every year that's hosted by stackoverflow.com. And who knows, maybe some participated in it. But for us PMs, it's like a really great survey to take a look at every year because it's a really big deep dive into the general trends going on in technology. Like what tools are people using, what IDEs are people using, what languages are most popular, that sort of thing. And for 4 years running, Visual Studio and VS Code have managed to stay at the top as far as being the top developer environments within the survey. And if you've been following along with like our monthly active user counts, especially back in, I think around the build timeframe in May when we were talking about it a lot, we recently, not even recently anymore, back in February, we hit over 50 million active users within the Visual Studio family. And then 10 million of those are in Visual Studio. And that was back in February. So I'm sure the number is even higher now, hopefully. But with those numbers and with those kinds of survey results, great power comes great responsibility and all that. So how can we continue to create an IDE that is able to that is able to bring in more people who are new to that experience and also make it so that people like yourselves are able to continue enjoying it and that we're addressing all of your pain points and other elements that make up Visual Studio going forward. So one answer to that is every new release that we do, the biggest one now being Visual Studio 2026. And as I mentioned earlier, Insiders 1 is out today. You're wondering where's this word insiders coming from? Couple of things. So this is the equivalent of our preview release now. So we've just replaced preview with insiders for I think two main reasons. So the first most obvious one to me at least is because it's more on parity with what VS Code is doing. So if you ever use a VS Code preview build, theirs is also called Insiders. So just keeping things consistent. And I think from a more marketing standpoint, we're using the word insiders because ideally we want you to be able to get the inside scoop. And part of getting the inside scoop means having more of a collaborative relationship between the VS team and the people actually using Visual Studio on a day-to-day basis. So we really want to improve that collaboration loop so that things happen quicker, feedback is being processed quicker, and all of that, and that you are able to stay more in the know on everything that we're doing. So with that, that includes the addition of monthly updates, which I think is really exciting. Historically speaking, usually you wait for a major Visual Studio version release like at Build or at Ignite or .NET Conf, and that's where you'll see all of those big features that might have shown up back in like a preview one, and now you've gone through like 8 previews until finally months later you see those features out in GA, general release mode. And we want to tighten that loop because that's a long time. And what this means is that for each set of features that make their way into an insider's build, the features that existed in the previous insider build will make their way into the general release. So if you're using Insiders 1 right now and you're seeing a lot of new features, some of which I'm going to talk about today, you should see those same features make their appearance ideally a month from now, or in our case, whenever we're officially starting the GA release of Visual Studio 2026. And with those monthly updates, we also just want to be more upfront and give more clarity on what we're even working on. So if you frequent the Visual Studio blog, you totally should, by the way, if you don't, we always talk, of course, about like, here are the latest, greatest features that are available in like for you to use now, but we're also introducing roadmap blog posts where we talk about here's what we're doing in the realm of Copilot and AI and all these other areas and debugging, just so you can know here's the things that we're working on. If you feel a certain way about it, like we totally appreciate your feedback, go to the developer community, which I think I'm going to plug a lot in this talk, and share your thoughts about it, and we'll try to iterate and make things better. So just making it so that on both sides there is an understanding of what's going on and that we have a quicker means of communicating with each other in order to make those visions become a reality in a way that suits everybody. So with Visual Studio 2026, of course, we've got 3 major themes that we are bringing with it. 2 of them, or honestly, all 3 of them are pretty similar to what you've probably seen with other major releases, but continuing them is important. And I think we've made a lot of improvements in the space. So first one is having a modern look and feel. So for those of you who've used Insiders, which you totally should, by the way, you can download it right now while I'm talking even. One of the first things you might notice when you boot it up for the first time is that it looks different. It's kind of hard for me to articulate in what ways in full because I was not on the design team, although I am set to do a toolbox talk on my show with said designers about all the things they considered when redesigning some of the aspects of Visual Studio. But the idea is to take the Fluent UI design system and use that to help improve general usability, accessibility, and focus on where your eye is supposed to go at any given point. So things that I've personally noticed that are different between 2022 and 2026 include things such as tighter margins, improved iconography, I think like bolder highlights around things. I noticed that when I use color tabs, the highlight around the window is like a lot bolder and has a lot more contrast going on to it. So just things that help make Visual Studio look pretty sleek, because at the end of the day, while it may not seem like much, you're spending hours and hours in Visual Studio, right? Like probably doing something, probably trying to debug something that you're not really enjoying in the moment. So in that case, we want to make it so that the environment itself is still easy on the eye. And with modern look and feel comes faster performance, which is probably the biggest frustration that I think everybody, including myself, has had at some point in time when working with Visual Studio. And at least for me, and I think for other people who've expressed the same thing, the other thing that you should hopefully notice when you first boot up Visual Studio is that it does feel a lot faster from the time you boot it up, to, especially if you've got like a larger solution, to the time where you hit F5. Things should just feel fast. We've taken a lot of the actions that are commonplace in Visual Studio, and we've moved them from a UI process to a background one, which should hopefully account for the improvement in perf and responsiveness. And I think this combined with the modern look and feel helps create something that just feels sleek. As Mads Christensen would put it, who I believe is going to be speaking in person in January. He called it lightweight, which is a scary word to use because usually I associate the word lightweight with VS Code. But I think ultimately that's the goal where we're trying to get to. If not exactly like VS Code, then at the very make things feel a lot more responsive than they have historically in the past with Visual Studio. And finally, we cannot talk about just anything in 2025 without talking about AI. So AI integrated development is our third theme, and specific emphasis on the integrated. Like some of the frustrations I have with AI sometimes, as do a lot of people, maybe even yourself, is that it can sometimes feel like we're creating a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. So we want to be able to take GitHub Copilot and those AI powered experiences and interweave them more into experiences that you're already used to. Personally, I think of some of my favorite features in Visual Studio as far as ones that utilize AI and Copilot. And it's the ones where it's already a tool that I use and it just further enhances it in some way. Like I've talked before about the IEnumerable visualizer in Visual Studio, which is really great. And that gives you a visualization from a tabular format of like your data or your list or any set of objects that you've got that you want to inspect while you're debugging. And that gives you a nice table view, but it also gives you the ability to write link queries and see what data is going to get filtered out depending on that query. And then on top of that, you can use Copilot, which got introduced to it recently, to generate those link queries using natural language, which I think is really exciting because once you get really complex with your link queries, having Copilot to help you do that in the sandbox that lets you visualize all of that as well is a win for me. So all these core themes, and of course we also are making it so that all of those workloads that you know and love are being brought in with VS 2026 and are also being improved alongside it. Just to mention a few, of course, .NET 10 and C# 14. I'm going to be talking about it a little bit in a couple slides, but you should also watch .NET Conf, which is like next week, because there's going to be some fun announcements there. Aspire, which I think as of 2 days ago, it's not even .NET Aspire anymore. It's just Aspire because it's polyglot now, which is exciting. And the ability to modernize .NET applications. I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. And of course, C++, just to name a few. So I mainly put this slide here to show you that there's a lot of workloads that a lot of you are probably using, and we have not forgotten about them. And we're each team with who works on those workloads are making sure that the usual features and actions are compatible with 2026, if not better than what they already are. So at the end of the day, we're trying to create an experience that is customizable for you and is tailored for you, and that you have the ability to do what it is that you want to do. And on that note, we to talk about the developer community a lot. I know it can seem like if you've ever used it, like you're submitting a feature request or a bug and it kind of goes into a black hole for a bit, and then every once in a while it might make its way back out. I promise you, real people look at it. I know it's not always the fastest thing, but we get so many tickets. So to talk about some of those, in the last 12 months, we have addressed over 4,400 issues and implemented over 290 feature requests, which is close to around 18 issues that we fix per workday, and around 1.2 features that we try to address per workday. So it's something that we're constantly thinking about. We're constantly going through those list of issues and seeing what is being the most voted on and going from there and trying to prioritize accordingly. And if you really want to see what features that we're doing correspond to feature request, you can go into the release notes, which I'll link at the end of this talk. And the release notes are great anyway, but there's a little megaphone icon that shows up next to all the different features that are being listed. And that indicates one that was based initially from a feature request. So take a look, because maybe one of your favorite features that you suggested made its way into Visual Studio at some point. So now going back to the topic of performance, here's a fun video that I want to share. The left side of the screen is Visual Studio 2022, and the right side is Visual Studio 2026. And we're just going to boot up a basic web app and see how long it takes to load it up. And that's it. Like normally I'd sometimes start the video as I'm talking, but if I did that, like the video would finish before I finished talking. So yeah, hopefully you notice that difference with your own projects in VS 2026. And also, I should note that some of these optimizations are happening because of changes that we've made in both the debugger and also in the .NET runtime, which is what creates that smoother experience in this case. So there's just a lot of performance improvements that are happening on all fronts. Some of them happen in .NET specifically, others are happening in VS proper. So it's a multi-team wide effort. And as a PM, I really like quotes and verbatim. So we shared the initial 2026 bits with Microsoft MVPs back like, I don't know, a couple months ago. And we got some feedback from them. I think the general themes that I wanted to point out here is just the fact that people feel that it's more responsive and that VS looks really pretty with the new UI, and those performance gains are noticeable. So I hope you notice them too. And if you don't, dev community. So again, on the topic of modern look and feel, here's an example I pointed out, like removing some of the padding in the margin section and just really widening that experience so that there's less sensory overload, I think, and really helping you stay focused on what you probably care about the most, which is code. And of course, my favorite part about any modern look and feel improvement involves the themes that we introduce. So the image here is all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all 10 built-in themes that you can access right from the moment you finish installing VS 2026. You don't have to go to the marketplace for these. I personally like to browse the marketplace, but if you don't, I think these are all really good. I'm using this dark blue one right now that you'll see when we get to the demos, but you've got options. The settings window. So you probably might have seen this if you've been using later versions of VS 2022. This is now a tab-based experience 95% of the time. The 5% where it's not, you'll still get that standard dialog box. But ultimately, this is great because it's no longer interrupting your entire workflow anymore. You can treat it just like any other tab. You don't have to exit out of it in order to go back to doing code stuff. You can keep it open for as long as you want. And I think that makes it a lot easier to experiment with different settings as well. And I should note that your settings should carry forward from an older Visual Studio version, or at least Visual Studio 2022. And we aren't going to have it so that those settings sync back to older VS versions because we want to really focus on that forward compatibility and make things clean. Another thing I wanted to point out is the boxed thing that I've circled in the image or squared out in the image. You now have the ability to do additional things with your settings, such as filter out settings. So if you only care about performance related settings, there's an option to do that. There's also an accessibility related filter. And you can choose whether to apply a setting to an entire user profiler or to a particular project, which is exciting. So if you've got a set of settings that you want to have for a particular repo that you've got, then you can do that. And you can take that now JSON file represented by the edit user settings as JSON and commit that like you would other files, and you're good to go. It's really similar to if you use VS Code at all, that settings experience in VS Code too. So we're doing the parity thing there. And extensions also got a similar glow up. I don't know about y'all, but for me, when I browse extensions, and I've historically always had to go to the browser to look on the marketplace for extensions because trying to do it in VS was such a pain in the butt because you used to not be able to see the full descriptions of the extensions. You couldn't see the images or the GIFs that the author might have included, and you're just missing ultimately. And again, it was also one of those pop-up dialogue windows that just completely interrupted whatever flow you were doing in order to do that browsing. So now it is a tab-based window. You now have the ability to view the entire description in that window like you would on the browser, so you don't have to leave VS, and you can do your usual installations and updates or whatever all you need to do. But I think the biggest thing to come with VS 2026 in this case is that if you've got extensions that are critical to your work environment, I am pleased to announce that all of those extensions should just work for the most part in VS 2026. So you shouldn't have to wait for the author to officially update their or officially migrate their extension so that it's compatible, because it should just be compatible by default 9 out of 10 times. So give your extensions that you're worried about a try. Like, again, go check out Insiders and see them hopefully working in action without you having to wait. Fun fact, I used to work on the Visual Studio extensibility team, and I was working on that team when we moved from 2022, which was also the same time that we moved to 64-bit. And that was that was a trip because there was a lot of work that the extension authors had to do to make that migration possible and make it so that their extensions could be supported by 2022 as a result of that 64-bit incorporation. So there was a lot of understandable frustration from both the author and also from users about how long it was taking to be able to move over to 2022 and that are important as a result. So I'm pleased to announce that that is not an issue in 2026, and you don't even have to wait for the compatibility to officially happen. There is a nice little tag next to extensions that indicate whether it's still targeting 2022 or not, but again, should still work. I can tell you the image optimizer does work as an example, since that's the one in the image. So okay, so .NET 10 and C# 14. This is like my quick Spark Notes version of it because, again, there's going to be a ton of talks all about what's new in this space in like a week. But here are some of the big ones. So right out the box, 10 and 14 are baked into VS 2026. So once you're done installing VS 2026, that's all you need in order to target a .NET 10 or C# 14 based project. So there's full support there that includes things such as the compiler, IntelliSense, debugging, colorization. That should all just work. As I mentioned earlier, performance has improved greatly across the .NET space, which is also what's contributing to VS feeling a little faster when you're working on .NET-based projects. And that includes things such as accurate syntax highlighting, code completion, error detection, and of course, everyone's favorite, hot reload, which for me, I've always had an inconsistent experience with hot reload at times, whether it's because it's just super slow for what should be a basic change, or because it just doesn't give me enough information about why it's choosing to fail and what scenarios are supported and which ones aren't. So we have made a lot of hot reload improvements. Some of them include performance, which I have a demo of in a few. And some of the other things that have been improved with it include a reduction in root edits. Root edits is our fancy way of saying any change that requires like a rebuild or a restart. So in our case, we've introduced scenarios that are now supported by hot reload, such as the ability to rename a file and editing code that contains lambdas with default parameter values, to name a few. And there's also improved performance and reliability for Razor files in particular, which I think has always been the most inconsistent experience for me and many other people. So on the topic of surveys, we have like a big general satisfaction Visual Studio survey that we put out every so often. You might have seen it pop up as a gold bar, encouraging you to take it at times in Visual Studio. And the results or the verbatims for that survey get sent out like almost every week. And it never fails. One of the most common pieces of feedback has been that hot reload is unreliable and inconsistent. And specifically, hot reload for Blazor or Razor files is just not great. So we're really trying to address those changes. And while I can't say it's perfect, it's, I think, noticeably improved in that space.
Hey, Leslie.
And also, oh yeah,
Hey, we've got a
yes,
question.
sure.
Let's see. What about feature sets, building blocks aside? Is that still Windows 10 plus compatible?
Um, or is it Windows 10 compatible for feature sets?
I'm reading it as is, so I'm not 100% sure on that one. Can
Okay,
you still, how
I'm
about
not
this one? Can you
sure.
still track languages and runtime versions through the historical sources?
Can you still track language versions through historical sources? I think you can. I've not tried it, but you should be able to.
Okay, fantastic.
Any other
And I
ones?
got to go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just asking if there were any other
Oh,
questions.
okay. The last one is 2026, is it made with WPF? And I know that since 2010, it has been a WPF application. I assume this version is still a WPF application.
Yeah, it is still used with WPF
Awesome.
or still built with WPF.
All right. All right. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out. Since I only have one screen right now, I can only really see my deck at the moment. So, yeah. Yeah, so those are the hot reload improvements. One more thing on hot reload I want to note is that some of the perf improvements are coming from the ability to now be able to auto restart on root edits. So in the event you do make a change in your project that is not supported by hot reload is not, or Visual Studio is not going to restart the entire set of processes if it doesn't have to. So for example, if you're using an Aspire application and you only change something in the front end and it wasn't supported, then it's only going to restart that front end process and not the back end one, which is saving a lot of time, especially depending on how big your project is. And since we're talking about Razor just got a big glow up, in my opinion. And I think the biggest reason for that, at least from a performance standpoint, is because of something called co hosting. And this is where we basically took the Razor compiler and the Razor tooling, and they now run excuse me, I can't speak today, co hosted inside a Roslyn LSP server. And this helps speed up stuff like file updates, aka hot reload, and improves reliability during editing. And at least for Insiders 1, this is existing under a feature flag. So you need to go to Tools Options and you can search co-host and you should find a setting that says use Roslyn co-host server. But again, if you stick around, GA is happening soon and that should just be turned on by default at that point. And other improvements in the Razor space includes better honoring of formatting styles, which has been a major pain point for a while, and making it so that tooltips are more consistent in Razor files. I've certainly had that issue too. And last but not least is the introduction of the GitHub Copilot app modernization agent, which is an absolute mouthful. I need to figure out an abbreviation for that or something. But historically, modernization or updating or migrating your applications to the latest .NET, it's not always been the easiest thing in the world, especially if you have a really old project or it's really big. It's a solution with a lot of updated or outdated terminology if you're using something earlier than C# 14 in this example. And that's why we've introduced an agent to walk you through the steps that you'd need to take in order to modernize it. So while it can't modernize your oldest applications 100%, it can at least start to shave off a good chunk of the time that it would take you just to get started and to even start addressing maybe more of the tedious issues that can come about when you're migrating. That agent is so cool. It's got like its own talk usually. I think John Galloway gave a talk just about the modernization agent at VS Live a couple months ago back in August. So it's growing with every passing update. All right, so going back to Razor hot reload performance, I've got another cool comparison video to show. So the left side of the screen is VS 2026 with co-hosting disabled via the tools options. And the one on the right is 2026 with co-hosting enabled. So let's see how much time it takes to see a change happen. And in this case, we're editing the word changed under you always wanted dash changed, and we're removing it. So I'm gonna play it and we'll see how long it takes. Okay, so we hit hot reload after making the change, and I like I like move my eyes away for a minute and it's already gone. So it took 3 seconds versus maybe this has happened to you before, the left side just taking forever despite having really just made a text change, which should not take this long. It's taking so long, we're gonna stop the video before it's even done. Okay, so Copilot, you've gone like 15, 20 whole minutes without really mentioning Copilot a lot. So there's a lot of Copilot updates. There's a couple that are more under the hood that I wanted to mention first. The first is the ability to bring your own model. So if you've got a model that doesn't exist by default in Copilot chat and you want to bring it to the table, you can. You got a key for it. So feel free to add your own custom models or pre-existing ones via an option in the tools options. And then we've also improved context for Copilot as a whole as well. So this includes things such as Copilot being able to pick up on URLs, improved code search, symbol awareness, better line number accuracy, which is probably the one I was most looking forward to because for whatever reason, my luck historically has been anytime I ask it to look at a particular set of lines, it just hallucinates because I use numbers all of a sudden. So I'm glad it doesn't really do that anymore. And as I kind of alluded to with the modernization agent, there's a lot more built-in agents that you can take advantage of to perform specific tasks. So there's that modernization one, but there's also the debugger and profiler ones, which I will talk about now. So this is a video of the debugger agent. Right now, it's specifically designed to work for debugging unit tests, but we're expanding out that functionality in the future. I've seen it work for other scenarios not involving tests, but it's a little bit hit or miss on that right now. But in this example, we're trying to debug a test, and you can right click on that test, like in this case, it's failing, and you can choose to debug with Copilot. And when you do that, it is going to call the debugging agent, which is going to set a hypothesis for what it thinks could be the problem. And it's going to take a set of steps that to try and validate that hypothesis. So it's going to tell you all that. It's being very upfront. And then on your behalf, it's going to run the debugger and rerun that test. So you're not having to do any of that yourself. It knows about the test explorer's existence, which is exciting. And then when it sees it fails again, it'll iterate and try to revise its hypothesis and come up with an additional fix to solve the problem. So here's the proposed fix that it's making. It's going to make that change in the code. It's going to run the test again. In this case, it passed. So now it's going to tell me the final result and also a general summary of everything that was happening. And of course, we can see what it's went about adding. So it's a nice way to basically shove off debugging tasks that maybe you just don't want to do and get Copilot to help you out with. So on a related note, we have the profiler agent, but before I can talk about the profiler agent, I got to talk about profiling. So the performance profiler is one of the best kept secrets in Visual Studio, in my opinion. It's a really powerful means of being able to profile or optimize or figure out how to optimize your code in a bunch of different ways. It lets you measure things such as CPU usage or database calls, memory usage, all that. But there's a couple issues with this. As cool as the performance profiler is, it's a lot going on. And if you're not extremely well versed in profiling, it may be hard to figure step is once you get all of this data that was measured. Like, I got this cool pie chart here. What do I do? How do I how do I reduce the issue going on in the method that was pinpointed as taking up the most CPU usage? What next? So that is why you can take advantage of the profiler agent, which will take advantage of those powerful tools on your behalf and then also give you some insights into both how to optimize and can optimize for you if you ask it. So here's another video I've got. And in this one, oh, I guess it has sound. I don't know if you can hear the sound, but no worries. In this one, we're calling the profiler, and we're telling it to run a benchmark on a particular method and try to optimize the code that's being called. So when it does that, it is going to run that performance profiler, which you can see alongside there. And instead of having to interpret that information yourself or phoning a friend who might be well versed or more well versed in profiling to get their opinion, it will give you a general measurement of all the benchmarks and what happened, and also hone in on areas of opportunity. So in this case, it's the Adler 32 large update method that's taking 165 milliseconds to process a data buffer. So that is ripe for some optimization. It's also telling you the percentage of time that is spent CPU wise in that particular method. And then you can ask it to optimize for you instead of having to figure it out on your own. Okay, so it's going to do that. And once it makes those changes, it will run the performance profiler information again and give you the updated results and tell you how much performance in this case has been doubled. So that is the profiler agent. So really cool way to work on optimizing your code without needing to be an expert in it. All right, so I have talked a lot in slides. So now we're gonna head over to VS 2026 and demo some stuff. But before I do, does anyone have any questions as I swap over to a different sharing thing?
So far, I think we're good. Someone asked about the pricing of Copilot, so I put a link in chat for the plans and pricing options for GitHub Copilot.
Ooh, thanks. Yeah, I think that's always a meaty one. I sometimes I wish we'd have like whole talks just dedicated to like, here's how token usage works and the different subscription tiers and things sometimes, because yeah, it is a relatable, understandable topic that I feel like we don't talk about nearly enough. Sweet. Okay, so here we are, VS 2026. I'm using one of the built-in themes. You can access them via, oh, didn't want that. Where can you access it? Under tools and then theme. Then look how many options you have. It's great. I'm using Moonlight Glow right now. Another fun thing I should note is if you want to have it both ways, like you want to have your editor maybe be light mode or dark mode, and then the outside be a different color, there is an option in settings that lets you do that now. So you could have a light mode editor with a dark mode background, which is exciting too. But right now, I want to talk about a feature that is maybe new to those of you who haven't used Visual Studio Enterprise before, so you're using Pro or Community. And that is a feature called code coverage. And this is a really cool tool that's existed in Visual Studio exclusively for enterprises for a while, but in 2026, we've introduced it to everybody, which is exciting because I think it's great. It enables you to measure how much of the tests that you've written are addressing areas of your code, or how much of your code is being covered by a particular set of tests. And this is great because it can help you identify, excuse me, let me try to hide this video or meeting controls. There we go. And it's great mainly because it helps you identify opportunities to add additional tests, or there's gaps in your code that just aren't being addressed. It can help you catch potential bugs that may not be a big deal just yet, but if you start to scale or you put your app into production, then it could become a problem there. All these different things. So to use this tool, you can go into test. But actually, I'm going to swap over to my testing layout. Fun fact, you can save window layouts, by the way. If you go into window and save window layout, you can save the state of all of your different windows, where they're located, how big they are. An example, I've got a testing based one, so it pulls out the test explorer and all this other stuff without me having to remember what that layout looked like. Okay, so now that we've got that, we're going to go to test and analyze code coverage for all tests. Okay. And what that does is going to open up this code coverage results table. Open this up a little bit. And it gives you some information about what lines of your code are being addressed by, in this case, my 68 products based test, and which ones are not. So I can expand each of these out. I can navigate to the different methods and stuff. But for me, really, I think the best feature in this table is this one, which is to show code coverage coloring. And this gives me a visual of all the areas of this particular file that are being covered by a test. So in this case, the blue indicates code that is being covered, and the orange beige color represents stuff that is not. So looks like I got some work to do under Git products here. So again, this is really cool, lets you address gaps in your test, which if you're doing test-driven development can be really important. And ideally, you want to make sure as much of your code is being covered as possible. What's nice about this as well is that you can take these reports and you can export them to wherever. So if you've got a CI/CD set up in like GitHub Actions or Azure DevOps, you can send the reports there. There are also tools that you can use externally that are great, such as this one, which is Report Generator. I like this one a lot because it puts that code coverage information into what I think is a more readable format. And I already ran the command that would generate that report for me, and so I can open it up. So this is the same set of code that I covered, but you'll see now it's like a full interactive report that I can see additional information on, and what I think is just a easier to read setting. My favorite is the square up here that lets me see the line coverage percentage. So ideally, let's say the ideal code coverage is 60%. I'm at 48. It's getting there, could be better. And then similar to the highlight feature in Visual Studio, I can click on any of these pages and get additional information about the file or get a summary on it. Yeah, so that is called Report Generator if you're interested. It's got a repo for it. But now that we're here, let's do some test related work in general, because obviously there's opportunity for me to improve here. And I actually did have an issue that I filed as a reminder to myself to add comprehensive unit test for this application. In this case, this is an application I'm using called Tiny Shop, and it's an Aspire app. It's similar to eShop if you've ever seen that in action, but a lot tinier and a lot more lightweight. So that is the context that we're doing. So I want to add some more tests, but we're going to be here all day if I do that manually. So I'm going to get Copilot to do that for me. So let's ask it to create unit test for the get products method. So we're going to do hashtag get products. And I could just end it there and hope that Copilot is going to do exactly what I have envisioned in my brain. But I always recommend trying to be more specific if you can with Copilot so that it's more likely to do what you want it to do. So there's a couple other things that I'm going to add to this prompt. So after that, I'm going to say use the Microsoft Docs to get the, let's see, latest way to write unit test. And I'm also going to add in an additional prompt or additional reference in this case, which I can do by using prompts. So in 2026, Visual Studio makes it easy to save or at the very least use prompts that you intend to reuse. And I think prompts are becoming more and more important with every passing day, especially as you use Copilot in this case more and more, especially once you find that unicorn prompt that just seems to work every time. You want to hold on to that. And that's why we have the ability to save and reuse prompts. So to do that, I'm going to go to prompts and then workspace prompts. And I'm going to select this one called C# X Unit Best Practices Prompt MD. I will explain myself in just a minute, but we're going to attach that. And I said way, but I'm just going to say best practices instead. I was blanking on the words. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and enter. And so I'm doing a couple things here. I'm asking it, of course, to generate the unit test for Git products because they're currently missing, but I'm also having it run an MCP server that I've got installed involving Microsoft Docs. So to talk about that real quick, I'm expanding this out here. There's a command being called here called running Microsoft Docs search. And that is accessed via this wrench tool down here. And I'm just going to type docs and hopefully it shows up. There it is. Yeah, so Microsoft Docs search. So this is part of an MCP server, which I could do a whole talk on. I'm actually putting a talk together for an internal thing next week, all about it. But for the context of this particular example, it is a way of, MCP is a way of exposing external data and information to the LLM. In this case, it's going to be Copilot and Claude Sonnet. And in this case, we're asking the LLM to invoke that MCP server to retrieve documentation related to unit tests that are listed under the Microsoft Docs. And if you want to install an MCP server, there are a couple of ways to do it. There is the most official way now is the MCP registry, which GitHub just introduced like a couple weeks ago. And it's kind of similar to like if you were installing an extension, you can take your pick from here. But in a recent update for insiders, there's now the ability to go to extensions and then MCP registries and view essentially an MCP server manager similar to like the extensibility or the extensions manager that lets you see different MCP servers that you can install. And then you don't have to worry about installing it manually if you do it via Visual Studio, which is exciting. So that's one thing. And the other thing I want to show is prompts. Where did I get that prompt from? So this is something called X Unit Best Practices prompt.md. See if it lets me open it here. Cool. And this is basically a setup that's like, here are the general rules for how I want you to create X unit tests. It's a way of keeping things more consistent, keeping things up to date, and making sure that the tests being written are actually modern and make sense. That said, I didn't actually write this one. I got this from a cool repository that you should have bookmarked called Awesome Copilot, which I'm going to search for. Cool. Yeah, so this is awesome-copilot, and it is an awesome repository that stores a bunch of community written agents, chat modes, prompts, Copilot instructions, the works. So if you find yourself doing similar tasks, like in my case, writing tasks or writing tests and things like that, this is a great place to go. And there's really starting to be prompts for everything. There's stuff for different languages, such as C Sharp, Python, you name it, they probably got it. So that is where you can access a lot of these. And it's really as simple as copy pasting a lot of these and putting them into a markdown file. So let's just take an example, like add educational comments. So let you code files so they become effective learning resources. In this case, I would just copy paste the raw markdown for this, and then I would put it in a regular text file, like a notepad or something, save it as a markdown, and specifically save it under a file called VS, I want to say .vs. I think it's the same spot where you put Copilot dash instructions, but we can double check that. So it is listed under, it's listed under .github. So this is where you'd normally put your Copilot dash instructions.md file, but you create a file called .github, create another file folder within it called prompts, and then put your markdown under that, and that will cause Visual Studio to be able to recognize your different prompts that you have. But cool, so we talked about prompts, we talked about MCP servers, and now it looks like all of the tests during that time have been successfully generated. So we've bumped up from like 60 something tests to 84 tests, which is exciting. Of course, I can click on any of these and go see what's up. For now, I'm gonna go ahead and accept these and hope they all run properly, but definitely review your tests that are generated by Copilot just in case. But now we're gonna run the code coverage tool again. And hopefully that addresses this gap in test under my product service file. Okay, so we've run it again. All the tests have been run. And now it is blue instead of beige. So we've now addressed that block of code, which is exciting. And now that we've made those tests and did everything, or just had a bunch of code that we just added, it's probably a good time to commit those changes. But before I do, I kind of want to get a second opinion on the stuff that I wrote. And I don't know about y'all, sometimes I feel a little self-conscious when I commit changes to the team, because like, what if I made a dumb human error? What if, I don't know, what if I'm going to get judged for what I've written, or something's just wrong and it was like a stupid mistake or something, all that imposter syndrome stuff. So if you feel that way, there's now the ability to get the ability to have Copilot to review some of those changes. I do like that it stresses it may not be fully accurate, but if you click on that under Get Changes, Copilot will go ahead and examine all of the changes that have been made or about to be committed, and then give its 2 cents. It might take a minute depending on how much it has to say. Here we go. So in this case, it's got 2 comments for me. I can click on those and, oh, okay, this is really big. Gonna minimize some stuff here. Actually, let's, okay. Yeah, so here's one comment. It says line 70 through 80 has repetitive assertion code. We should consider extracting the logic into a helper method. Okay, and like you can take or leave as much of this as you want, but ultimately it's just like having another entity to review what you're doing before you submit, especially when some of these comments are things that can't be identified via like an analyzer or something that you have set up. Yeah, so can handle this gracefully. There's some contradictions. That's fine. In this case, I'm going to ignore Copilot, but the option to review is there. So that's a new addition to 2026. It's this little chat box that has little fancy stars next to it. And now that we've done that, I think it's okay to go ahead and commit those changes, create a PR, the works. But instead of doing that through Git changes, I'm going to go back and use another MCP server, because there is a GitHub one. If you're an Azure DevOps person, there's also an MCP server for that. But in this case, it enables the LLM to be able to view external information about my repository in this case, especially when it's like remote up in the ether and the GitHub site, and take that information and roll with it depending on what I ask it to do. So in this case, I'll say, let's create a PR for these tests and link the PR to the related test issue. And also because, again, I like to be specific. And one of my pet peeves with MCP servers sometimes is that they can be hard to invoke depending on what I'm doing. I'm just going to make it really clear for Copilot and be like, use the GitHub MCP server to create a PR. All right. So hopefully it's going to do its thing. So fun fact, if you're using an MCP server for the first time, Visual Studio or VS Code or whatever host you're using is going to keep you in the know on what's going on, because MCP servers, it's an external source. It might be kind of shady. So it's just double checking that, are you sure you want me to use a tool that is related to that server? In this case, yes, I do. So we're going to have it run, or it's going to retrieve my user profile. And it's going to search through all of my existing issues to find something related to testing. It found the issue that I have about comprehensive unit test. And now it's going to go through all of my branches that I have. It's going to create a new branch specifically for the Git products. That's a new one. I haven't actually seen it do that in a demo. But hopefully the results should still be the same. And now it's going to push those updated test changes to a new branch and create the PR. So you'll see that there's different tool action, and that's kind of the nice part about MCP servers. You can have so many tools that do different tasks that normally you might have to do manually, and you can feed that, and the LLM can take advantage of that in order to do the smart AI thing while also having that external context that it maybe wasn't trained on initially. Okay, so it's doing a push. And obviously I'm using it for a PR, but to give more examples, you could use the MCP server, the GitHub one in this case, to have it write you like a README file. In that case, it'll probably read through all of the different accepted PRs or commits and generate a README, which can save you a lot of time there. You can have it be like, go through all those commits to create a set of instructions on how other people can run that particular application that you're doing. And yeah, there's just a lot of power that comes with MCP servers in general, I think.
So a question came in
Sure.
is, are you able to let one agent do some work and then have another agent do the checking and see how
That
they
is a wonderful
compare?
question. Yeah, the whole A to A thing. So we're getting there, I think, with both VS and VS Code. I don't think it's really good at that yet. It happens, or you can't really do it in parallel in Visual Studio yet, although that is something that is on the table right now. Like, we're talking a little bit about creating some kind of like dashboard or new experience in Visual Studio that enables the ability to run several agents concurrently, and then it'll do its thing. You can do your thing, and then it will report back accordingly. But right now, that is sadly not possible in Visual Studio.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think it's almost done. It's always funny with demos that you practice and then it goes really fast, and then when you do it in front of people, then it's like, nope, I'm super shy. We're gonna take our sweet time doing it. Okay, so it made a PR. And now we're going to add a comment to the related issue to link it to our pull request. There are some things on the MCP server world that are going to be improved in the near future, hopefully. So talking about future stuff. One of the things is this menu. It's I find it really bad, especially if you're like me and you use a lot of different MCP servers because it's a really small window. There are plans to improve this experience here. We also, of course, introduced recently the MCP server registry internally in Visual Studio, which is good. And there's also going to be some additional things revolving around building an MCP server and making it easy to do that are hopefully coming soon too. So stay tuned. But as I was talking, it looks like we have, oh, I scrolled up too much. The PR that is now ready for review. So I'm going to go select this link and hopefully we'll see it. There we go. So here's the PR. And what I like about doing my PRs through the MCP server instead of doing it through Visual Studio's Get Changes, because that is a totally valid way to do it, is that kind of by default, if you do it through the MCP server and Copilot, you're going to get a very detailed PR. I'm guilty of this too, but there have been so many times where we'll create PRs and they have basically no description in them regarding what is going on, what was changed. Sometimes I'll just see a pull request that just has a title and nothing else, and I have to glean everything from those 10 words. And that's not great. That's not really productive for anybody, because then now I have to find some time to talk with the person about like, what did you mean by this? Or I have to spend my time going through the files and trying to figure it out myself. So with this, as you can see, it got really detailed about the kinds of tests that it added and the different edge cases that are supported, the technical implementation, because I asked it about best practices. It's saying what best practices it used. And also it's giving me a coverage breakdown, which is exciting because we did code coverage, among other things. So this is a lot of stuff that I don't think the average person would be writing for every PR that they did. But if you do it through Copilot, it's a way to get extremely detailed without having to do the work with that. And I mentioned that I wanted it tied to an issue, and I believe I put it somewhere. Oh, I had it add a comment under issue. So let's go to related issue. And there we go. That's the issue. And here somewhere. Here we go. Here's a giant comment with a product progress update on where we're at with that. And then it's linking the corresponding PR. So that was basically just working with Copilot and a lot of its new additions, including the ability to reuse prompts and take advantage of Microsoft MCP servers, although you can use Microsoft-based MCP servers, such as the Microsoft Learn Docs MCP server, which is what I use all the time. And the ability to review changes with Copilot, code coverage, which has existed for a while, but is exciting because now it's available to everybody. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And speaking of a lot of stuff going on, I just talked about a lot of stuff. So there's a couple good ways to keep track of everything that we're introducing into Visual Studio, especially now that we're having this monthly cadence thing. So the first one is via the blog, as I mentioned. I think that's like the most readable way to see a lot of changes. But there's also the release notes, which I genuinely like looking at the release notes. They're not just like a giant bulleted list with nothing but they're like they have GIFs in them. They have really digestible descriptions on what they do. If you like your release notes, maybe within Visual Studio, there is the what's new option, which you can go to via help and then what's new. And this lets you see an integrated set of updates directly within VS. Functions like any other tab too, so it's not interrupting your workflow really. And then finally, of course, the developer community should be your best friend for all things Visual Studio. Like I can't tell you how many features got introduced either now or in the past or in the future because of what everybody writes in the developer community. So please continue to do it. And thank you if you have done it. And if you want the best way to share a feature request or a bug, I highly recommend doing it. Excuse me, it's late. Doing it through Visual Studio itself instead of via the browser, which you can do via help and then go to send feedback and then either report a problem if it's a bug or suggest a feature if it's a feature request. When you do this, it will bring over that extra system and Visual Studio version information that saves us all a bunch of time because then we don't have to put the needs more info tag and then follow up with you on some additional stuff that we need in order to figure out like what version the issue could be in and stuff like that. So it's all just there and it helps us address the issue a lot quicker. And going back to my slides real quick. I talked about a lot. So if you want some handy links that maybe you do have access to already, or maybe you don't, here's a URL, or you can take a picture of this QR code. The urllist.com/vs productivity. It's basically a hub where I've listed a bunch of different links that I think are worthwhile, such as the blog, the release notes, the .NET blog. So there's a VS blog and a .NET one. The Visual Studio YouTube channel, that more than ever is getting so much content on a regular basis. There's a lot of short form content on there. And of course, there's my long form VS Toolbox Show playlist as well. And I've got a link to this repository. And I'm not super active on social media these days, but Visual Studio is. So if you're on Blue Sky or X, Visual Studio is the same. It's the same tag. And once again, developer community, your new best friend. So with that, thank you so much for listening to my talk. I hope you're excited to try out the latest Visual Studio 2026. If you haven't already, please continue to share your feedback in the developer community. Hopefully we're going to have a lot more and a lot faster communication and collaboration going forward, and happy coding.
Thank you, Leslie. This was awesome. I greatly appreciate it. There are a lot of great comments in the chat about this as well. Really appreciative. And
Awesome.
the links have been shared as quickly as I could get hold of them, and I made sure I typed them in correctly, so then I paste them in the chat. So they should be good links. All right. Last chance for questions before Leslie needs to head off. So is there any other last second questions? Um, Are you able to see the chat?
Yeah, I can see that. Scroll
Okay.
back now.
All right, good.
One thing I miss in 2026 is having the sync with active document button work as a toggle button instead of a regular button. Which button is that? I feel like I'd know what you're talking about if I saw it. I don't always remember the names for all of them. That's cool. But I think that's a great feature request thing, or at least having the option to change it to more of a toggle instead of a regular button. I noticed a new template. That is a brand new template as part of, at least I've only seen it in 2026. So yeah, if you really want to do your profiling thing, definitely take advantage of the new benchmark project template, which is great. And if you ask the profiling agent to do profiling stuff for you, sometimes it will create that project on your behalf so that you don't have to worry about it. So give it a try.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, that button. Yep, I have seen that before. That is totally fair. I could understand wanting it to be maybe more of a toggle, but I guess the idea is like as a button, because you're synced, you're like fully synced, or maybe like would you want it disabled if you're already fully synced up? Otherwise, it will be an enabled button in the event there's a syncing opportunity happening. Because yeah, but yeah, share that as a dev community thing and tell everybody in the chat to upload it. I'll upload it if you do it. Like send me a link. Oh, also, I will share my email in the chat. So if any of you have any questions and stuff, like after the fact, they like you wake up with cold sweats at 2 a.m. about something that you wish you'd asked me about 2026 or something, feel free to ask away. Which model do I prefer? Ooh, I'm kind of a Claude person. I really like, I'm using Claude Sonnet 4.5 a lot these days. That's what I was using in the demo. Uh, but I think Claude Sonnet 4 is still pretty good. I use that one a lot for specifically for a chat mode I like to use called Beast Mode, which is available under the Awesome Dash Copilot repository. That's like a cool all-in-one end-all be-all prompt that just kind of works for 9 out of 10 scenarios. So if you don't have a specific prompt that you want to use, just use Beast Mode because that's like it's pretty involved and very detailed. I think the crux of it is that it's not going to hallucinate because it's not allowed to give you any answers unless it looks up things first, which is exciting. So I like that one a lot. But yeah, model wise, I'm on the Claude train these days. Claude Sonnet 4 and 4.5. I've not tried what is it, Claude Haiku yet, which just got introduced in VS Code. I don't think it's in VS just yet. Let me double check. But it seems pretty good. Oh, no, okay. Claude Haiku is also in VS, so pick your poison. I think it kind of comes, I know there's like specific nuance to when you should use one model or another, but honestly, I don't think most people are going to do that. You're going to pick one that you're the most comfortable with, has is giving you responses that cater to what it is that you want and specifically are conveying that information in a way that you want. Like personally, I bounced off of GPT-5 for a while because I didn't like how blunt it was sometimes. And like I like bluntness in my day-to-day, but I maybe just because like I don't always trust the information that the overly confident LLM gives me sometimes, but I like to have more details that I can pick apart personally. So whatever floats your boat, and also whatever floats your budget, I should say as well. So that's what I like. 4.5 GPT 4.5 is cool too. Will I be able to modernize .NET Framework to .NET 10? Yeah. Oh man. So I'd say give that modernization agent a try and see what happens. I can't guarantee it can get you all the way because Framework 4.5 is way back there, but it might be able to help you get started at least, which I think is a win because sometimes the get started point can be the hardest step. So definitely give that a try. That agent should be available in VS by default. I think if you do, I'm doing it right now. If you use the @ symbol in Copilot chat, there is a modernize option in the dropdown that pops up. So select that one and tell it what you want it to do. And what's cool about that agent is that it will also pull up like this dialog window or tabbed window that gives you like a step-by-step detailed list of that's going to do, or at the very least give you steps that you can do after it's done doing its thing. So give it a try. Assume can install them from the usual sources. Yeah, if you need the earlier frameworks, I think they're still there. You just got to dig through the .NET website. So
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. Greatly appreciate it. All
no
right.
problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I appreciate it. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Everybody's welcome to stay for the after party. So hang out for just a bit.